The moment the notary slid the final papers across the mahogany table in that sterile Midtown law office, I felt the floor drop out from under me like a trapdoor in a gallows. My father, our father, had been dead exactly 11 days, and there I sat, watching my older sister Victoria sign her name with that same flawless cursive she'd practiced since boarding school, claiming every single cent of the 47 million estate that was supposed to be split 50-50. The lawyer's voice sounded muffled, like he was speaking underwater. "Miss Harper, your father changed the will 3 weeks before his passing. You've been disinherited." Victoria didn't even glance at me. She just pressed her lips into that polite, sympathetic half-smile people give at funerals and murmured, "I'm so sorry, Ava. Dad must have thought you weren't ready." Ready. I'd spent the last decade running his real estate holding companies while she jetted between charity galas and silent auctions, flashing the smile that got her on the society pages. I'd found him when he collapsed in the Hamptons house, held his hand while the ambulance screamed up the driveway. Listened to him whisper my name with his last breath. Yet somehow, in 3 weeks I never knew about, he decided his junkie, adjacent, emotionally absent daughter Victoria was the responsible one. I stood up so fast the chair rolled back and crashed against the glass wall overlooking Fifth Avenue. My voice didn't even sound like mine when I asked for a copy of the new will. Victoria finally looked at me, those ice blue eyes we both inherited from Mom, and said, soft enough that only I could hear, "Don't make this ugly, little sister. Some things are better left buried." I walked out into the January sleet, feeling the city chew me up and spit me out on the sidewalk. And that's when the rage started burning so hot, I couldn't feel the cold anymore. Because 3 nights before Dad died, when the morphine made him lucid, for one terrifying hour, he grabbed my wrist with more strength than a dying man should have and rasped, "Don't let Tori take everything. Promise me, Ava. Promise me you'll fight." I promised. And in the silence after his heart monitor flat-lined, I did something I never told another soul. I pressed record on my phone while Victoria stood in the hallway on a hushed call, laughing about finally getting what was owed. And making sure the little princess doesn't see a dime. 47 seconds that would ruin her perfect life. I kept that recording like a loaded gun in my pocket for 7 months. Waiting, planning, bleeding quietly while she flourished. And that was the moment I knew. The real revenge begins now. I let her think she'd won. That was the first rule of the long game. Victoria Harper, 38, senior partner at Creed & Whitmore. The kind of woman who could gut you with a smile and a charitable donation in the same breath, moved into Dad's Tribeca penthouse the week after the funeral, through a tasteful celebration of life that somehow ended up on page 6 and never once looked back. Me. I still had my junior VP office on the 42nd floor of Harper Holdings, the company Dad built and I kept profitable while Victoria collected accolades for philanthropy. She let me keep the job, probably because firing the grieving daughter so soon would look bad in the press. So I showed up every morning in the same black blazer, hair in a low knot, eyes ringed with the kind of exhaustion that can't be hidden by concealer. And I smiled at the security guards, smiled at the interns, smiled when Victoria breezed past my glass door in her Louboutins without knocking. I became the perfect ghost. But ghosts see everything. I started small, almost gentle. A quietly planted rumor that Victoria had been overheard, expressing doubts about the firm's new acquisitions. A forged email, nothing dramatic. Just enough to make the board request one extra layer of due diligence. She felt the first sting in March, when a $180 million Soho development deal got delayed 2 weeks because of new concerns about fiduciary transparency. She stormed into my office that afternoon, heels clicking like gunshots on the marble, and shut the door so hard the blinds rattled. "What the fuck are you playing at, Iva?" Her voice stayed low. Victoria never yelled. Yelling was for people who'd already lost control. I looked up from my laptop with the blank expression I'd been perfecting. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't insult me. Someone's whispering in corners, and the only person with motive is you." I let a tear form, real one. Took me weeks to master on command, and whispered, "Maybe if you hadn't stolen everything Dad spent his life building, I wouldn't have to watch my own sister destroy his legacy from the inside." She stared at me for a long second, and I saw it flicker the tiniest fracture in the ice. Guilt. Fear, then it was gone. She leaned over my desk. "Chanel, no five and threat. Stay in your lane, little girl. You're still on my payroll." She left, and I waited 60 seconds before I opened the bottom drawer, slipped on noise, canceling headphones, and listened to those 47 seconds again. Her voice, crystal clear. "Once he's gone, the revised will is ironclad. Ava gets the scraps if that. I've made sure of it." A soft, cruel laugh. "She'll never know what hit her." I smiled for the first time in months. Spring turned into a humid, unbearable summer. The city stank of hot garbage and ambition. Victoria announced her engagement to Senator Grayson Caldwell. Old money, new power, the kind of match that made the Times wedding section salivate. She invited me to the engagement party at their new 5,000 square foot loft in Chelsea, all exposed brick and $10 million views. I RSVP'd yes because refusing would have been suspicious. I wore a simple black dress that cost $79 at Nordstrom Rack, and let my hair hang loose so the scar from childhood showed just enough when I turned my head. Grayson kissed my cheek like we were old friends, and whispered how sorry he was about Dad. Victoria watched us from across the room, champagne flute frozen halfway to her perfect lips. Later, when the string quartet was playing something mournful and the waiters were clearing dessert, she cornered me on the terrace. The Hudson glittered black and gold below us. "You look thin," she said like it was an accusation. "Grief does that. Or resentment." She sipped her champagne. "I know you're hurting Ava. But this passive, aggressive haunting routine, it's beneath you." I met her eyes. "You have no idea what's beneath me?" Something in my tone made her pause. For the first time since the funeral, Victoria looked genuinely unsettled. "Good." I started escalating. I created a new email address, Varper, Whistleblower87, and fed documents to a junior reporter at the Post. Nothing that could be traced back to the company servers, just enough to plant seeds questions about whether Harper Holdings' sudden windfall after Dad's death had been properly audited. Then I leaked a redacted copy of the old will, the one that still had my name next to half the estate, to a trusts, an estates blog that loved scandal. Comments exploded. Elder abuse. Undue influence. Victoria's PR team went into overdrive, but mud sticks when it's wet. She fired me on a Tuesday in September. Security escorted me out while the entire floor pretended not to watch. Victoria didn't even come down from the executive floor. She sent HR with a cardboard box and a non-disclosure agreement thicker than the Bible. I signed nothing. In the elevator I caught my reflection, sharp cheekbones, haunted eyes, mouth set like I was biting down on broken glass. And I looked exactly like the woman who was going to burn everything to the ground. That night I moved into a rented loft in Red Hook. Cash only, no lease in my name. I bought a burner phone, a police scanner, and a voice-changing app. I started calling in tips to every outlet that would listen anonymous, always anonymous. By October the SEC announced an informal inquiry. Victoria's engagement photos still ran in vogue, but the caption mentioned ongoing questions about the source of the Harper family's recent liquidity. She tried to find me. private investigators knocked on my old apartment door in Murray Hill. I'd already subleased it to a Parsons student who thought they were hitting the jackpot. They staked out Mom's nursing home in Westchester. I visited at 3 a.m., wearing a wig and scrubs. Victoria grew thinner, the way powerful people do when control starts slipping. Cheekbones like blades, eyes ringed with the kind of concealer money can't buy. In November, Grayson called off the wedding. The official story was irreconcilable schedules. The truth was he'd seen the writing on the wall. Marrying Victoria Harper now was like tying yourself to an anchor mid-shipwreck. I waited until the night before Thanksgiving. The city was half empty, streets slick with rain that smelled like metal and regret. I took the subway to Tribeca wearing a black hoodie and a baseball cap pulled low. Dad's penthouse, her penthouse, still had the same doorman, Luis, who'd known me since I was 12. I waited until he stepped out for a smoke, slipped through the side entrance, and used the emergency key I'd never returned. The elevator remembered my fingerprint. The apartment was dark except for the skyline bleeding light through floor to ceiling windows. Victoria sat on the leather sectional, barefoot in silk pajamas, a half-empty bottle of Macallan 25 on the coffee table. She didn't hear me until I was 10 feet away. She looked up, and for the first time in my life, my sister was afraid of me. Ava, she breathed, like saying my name might make me real. I pulled the burner phone from my pocket and pressed play. Her own voice filled the room, tinny but unmistakable. Once he's gone. The revised will is ironclad. She'll never know what hit her. She went so pale I thought she might pass out. Where did you? Doesn't matter. I stopped the recording. What matters is where this goes next. FBI Field Office, Southern District, every major network. The DA who owes me a favor from that favor I did his wife 2 years ago. Or we can keep it between us. She found her voice, shaky but still trying for control. How much? This isn't about money anymore, Tori. I stepped closer. You took everything. Dad's love, his legacy, my future. You made me watch you dance on his grave in designer shoes. So no. I don't want your money. What do you want? I told her. She cried, ugly, snot-nosed sobs that ruined her perfect face. She begged. She threatened. She offered me half the company, the Hamptons house, Grayson if I wanted him. I waited until she was hoarse. Then I laid out the terms. At 90 a.m., the Monday after Thanksgiving, Victoria Harper held a press conference on the steps of Creed and Whitmore. Cameras flashed like lightning. She wore a navy suit and no makeup, hair pulled back severe. She confessed everything. Forging Dad's signature with the help of a now disbarred lawyer, paying off the notary, moving assets into offshore accounts to hide the scale of the theft. She announced she was stepping down as partner, transferring controlling interest in Harper Holdings to a trust in my name, and turning herself into federal authorities. She apologized to me by name, voice cracking on national television. I watched from a bar in Bushwick, nursing a club soda while strangers around me whispered, "Holy shit. That's her sister." When it was over, I walked out into the cold, bright morning and hailed a cab to Red Hook. In the loft I poured myself a finger of the same Macallan I'd watched her kill the night I confronted her. I raised the glass toward the window, toward the skyline where she used to rule. "To family," I said, and drank the recording. I deleted it the moment she finished speaking on those steps. Some weapons you only need once. They sentenced her to 12 years in April. I visited once, out of curiosity more than anything. She'd lost weight, the prison jumpsuit hanging off her like a bad joke. Her eyes were still blue, but the ice had melted into something small and human. "You won," she said through the glass. "No," I told her. "I just stopped losing." I hung up the phone, walked out into the spring sunshine, and never looked back.